Hi, my name is Noel. I'm 57 years of age. My story began 4 years ago. Um, I was very healthy. I was doing a lot of running, working out in the gym, training for 5k runs. I'd done a lot of 5k runs. At the time of training for the 5k run, I developed a pain in my calf, which I thought was related to doing too much running. I also had a shortness of breath. I suppose the main thing for me was that I had heard about DVTs but didn't know any of the symptoms of DVTs, so I never put one and one together against these. The pain continued for a couple of weeks, probably 2 to 3 weeks. Following on from that, then I decided to stop running. And then one evening when I was at home, I got a pain in my back and collapsed on the floor. It took me a long time to come around from it. So the next day I made an appointment with my GP, and I went to the GP. And after meeting with the GP, he diagnosed the pulled anterior muscle, which he felt was a combination of the running and the work that I was doing in the gym. He put me on tablets to try and stop the pain in the back, and said, after 2 weeks I should be fine to carry on. So 2 weeks I still had the pain, 2 weeks I still had the shortness of breath. But at the end of the 2 weeks I started back a little bit of running and started back into the gym. Following on from that, about a week later, I had another serious episode again, whereby I collapsed and the same pain again. I made another appointment with my GP, and when I went back to the GP a couple of days later, he basically told me that I had pulled the muscle on the other side because I was overcompensating for the pain on the right hand side. So I was put on the course of another tablets for another week, and at the end of that week the pain actually was worse. And then what happened after that then was I got swelling in my leg, to the extent that I couldn't actually walk on the leg. And at that point then, that's when I ended up going to A&E. I arrived in A&E, and when I was triaged as low priority, because the triage nurse didn't really know what she was looking out for. So I was sent back out to the waiting room, and I was sitting in the waiting room where I was there for approximately 8 hours in quite considerable pain with the leg. While I was sitting in the waiting room, I happened to notice a poster on the wall. And as I started to read the poster on the wall, it was basically setting out symptoms associated with blood clots. And as I read through the list, every one of the symptoms that were on that list was what I was experiencing. So I went back up to the administration person on the desk, and I explained to them I had been there for the 8 hours, and explained about the poster on the wall. Following on from that, shortly after that, I was called in, and the doctor asked me to explain the symptoms. I told him the symptoms, and I told him what I had read outside. He took bloods and sent them off on an emergency sheet to get them done. Shortly after that, about 40 minutes later, the bloods came back, and the bloods confirmed that I actually had a blood clot. So at that point, I suppose action was taken then to get me admitted in, get me onto the medication to try and prevent any further damage from the clots. After a period of time then, the consultant came around and explained, yes, that I had a blood clot. Again, I didn't quite understand. I'd heard blood clots, but I didn't know what a blood clot was. But the sobering thing was that when the consultant told me that with this blood clot, he basically told me that the next 48 hours would be critical. That in the event that this clot broke off, there's nothing that they could do to prevent it. So that was a major shock, and I think from there on in, I didn't really hear too much about what was said. So when I came home from hospital, I had very little information, and I didn't know where to go for information. It was at that point then that I remembered, when I was in the A&E, the poster that was on the wall. And the poster on the wall, as I said previously, was set me on the road to find out what was going on. It told me the symptoms that I had, and more importantly then, it gave me a name. It gave me the name of Thrombosis Ireland. It gave me somewhere where I could go to try and get some information. So from that poster, I made contact with Thrombosis Ireland, and it was like a major weight had been lifted from my shoulder, because Thrombosis Ireland, through that poster, gave me all the information I needed. They gave me information about what to expect from the road to recovery. They gave me information about fellow people who have suffered from VTEs and DVTs. They gave me information about simple things like compression socks, where to get compression socks and the right compression socks. But more importantly, from that poster, it gave me a support group that I could link in with over the period of time, and to talk to other survivors of DVTs. One of the things that I have found, and I think a lot of people have found who have suffered this, is that there is a lack of an awareness of exactly what's going on. So I spoke to the GP, I explained to the GP what had happened, how I'd been misdiagnosed, and the GP took on board exactly what I said, and would make the rest of the GPs more aware of the symptoms that potentially people would have. So for me, the journey was a long journey, but it was a journey that I took alongside a lot of people. It was a journey that I took for myself, and I suppose the big thing for me is that I survived. I'm one of the lucky ones. Some people have not been as lucky as I have, but I think with more knowledge and people being more aware of symptoms, more people could survive from DVTs.